Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Welcome to historic Boston and the commissioning of United States ship Thomas Hudner. I am Commander Brett Litchfield, the ship's executive officer. It is my privilege to be your master of ceremonies today. Before our ceremony begins, please silence your cell phones. We would like to recognize Massachusetts native Sergeant First Class Eric Michael Amand, who paid the ultimate sacrifice on November 27th while serving with Army Special Forces in Ghazni Province, Afghanistan. Sergeant Amand was a hero at home and abroad and was key in helping establish the Massachusetts Fallen Heroes Memorial in the Seaport District. Please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. We are here today to celebrate the commissioning of USS Thomas Hudner. The ship before you was christened in Bath, Maine on April 1st, 2017. Today she is complete, and this crew is proud to serve on the newest destroyer in the United States Navy. Our crew is dedicated to carrying out the courageous legacy handed down to us by her namesake, Massachusetts native and Medal of Honor recipient, Captain Thomas Hudner, Jr. To quote then Lieutenant Junior Grade Hudner's Medal of Honor citation, while attempting to rescue a squadron mate whose plane, struck by anti-aircraft fire and trailing smoke, was forced down behind enemy lines, quickly maneuvering to circle the downed pilot and protect him from enemy troops infesting the area, Lieutenant J.G. Hudner risked his life to save the injured flyer who was trapped alive in the burning wreckage. Fully aware of the extreme danger in landing on the rough mountainous terrain and the scant hope of escape or survival in sub-zero temperature, he put his plane down skillfully in the deliberate wheels-up landing in the presence of enemy troops. With his bare hands, he packed the fuselage with snow to keep the flames away from the pilot and struggled to pull him free. Unsuccessful in this, he returned to his crashed aircraft and radioed other airborne planes, requesting that a helicopter be dispatched with axe and fire extinguisher. He then remained on the spot despite the continuing danger from enemy action, and with the assistance of the rescue pilot, renewed a desperate but unavailing battle against time, cold, and flames. Lieutenant J.G. Hudner's exceptionally valiant action and selfless devotion to a shipmate sustained and enhanced the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. In that same spirit, this ship will sail the oceans, often alone, and will stand vigilant against those who would threaten democracy and freedom. This crew is honored to serve in the ship which bears his name. Our ceremony today is a time-honored tradition which began with the commissioning of our first warship in 1775. Since then, thousands of ships have undergone the transformation from silent hulls to fully alive warships. Our commissioning crew, hereafter known as plank owners, are in formation among you and ready to bring our ship to life. In just a few moments, the United States Navy Band Northeast, Concord Independent Saluting Battery, and the Massachusetts Army National Guard Howitzers will render honors to the Honorable Charlie Baker. Will the guests please rise and remain standing for the arrival of our official party, honors, presentation of colors, and the invocation. Ladies and gentlemen, our platform guests. Commander David Shirk, Chaplain Corps, United States Navy. Captain Thomas Hennessy, United States Navy, retired Chairman, USS Thomas Hudner Commissioning Committee. Mr. Jim Sheridan, Vice President and General Manager, Lockheed Martin Rotary and Mission Systems. Captain Casey Moten, United States Navy, DDG 51 Class Program Manager. Captain Joseph Toot, United States Navy, Supervisor of Shipbuilding, Bath, Maine. Captain Richard Meyer, United States Navy, Deputy Commodore, Naval Surface Squadron 14. Miss Jessica Knight Henry, granddaughter to Ensign Jessie Brown. Mr. Ed Kenyon, DDG 51 Class Program Manager, General Dynamics, Bath Iron Works. Mr. Thomas Hudner III, son of Captain Thomas Hudner, Jr. Rear Admiral William Glennis, United States Navy, Program Executive Officer, Ships. Vice Admiral Richard Brown, United States Navy, Commander, Naval Surface Forces, Naval Surface Force, U.S. Pacific Fleet. Admiral William Moran, Vice Chief of Naval Operations. The Honorable Marty Walsh, Mayor, City of Boston. General Joseph F. Dunford, United States Marine Corps, Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff. The Honorable Richard V. Spencer, Secretary of the Navy. The Honorable Stephen Lynch, United States Representative, Massachusetts 8th District. Mrs. Georgia Hudner and Mrs. Barbara Miller are ship sponsors, escorted today by Command Master Chief Catherine Coleman. The Honorable Charlie Baker, escorted today by Commander Nathan Sherry, United States Navy, Thomas Hudner's commanding officer. Ladies and gentlemen, honors to the Honorable Charlie Baker. Platform and salute. fire the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, Chaplain Shirk will deliver the invocation.
Let us pray. Most gracious and holy Creator, we bow before your throne seeking your blessing upon what we undertake this morning, the commissioning of the destroyer, USS Thomas Hudner. For it is not the technology, plans, or steel that gives the ship life. May it seek to live out the ethos of this great nation, our Navy, and the namesake of this ship, Captain Thomas Hudner, as he downed his aircraft to save another, that all men are created equal. Father, we pray this ship first be a statement of our desire for peace long before it must be used as a weapon of war. In this we pray in your name. Amen.
Will the guests please be seated? Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Marty Walsh.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. To Ms. Hudner, Ms. Miller, Governor Baker, Congressman Lynch, the family of the Hudner family, Jessie Brown, Secretary Spencer, General Dunford, flag officers and general officers, Commander Sherry, military service members and veterans, distinguished guests. It's my profound honor to welcome you to the city of Boston for the commissioning of the USS Thomas Hudner. This is a day with great pride for the city of Boston. As we gather here on Boston Harbor, one of the birthplaces of the American Revolution, one of the iconic places in the American naval tradition, we are here to bear witness to the strength of this tradition. I want to publicly thank the crew of the USS Thomas Hudner for your commitment that you have made to serve. And I want to thank the Hudner family for sharing an American hero and a Medal of Honor recipient with us. Captain Hudner's historic acts and life of service embodies the teamwork, duty, and courage that makes our military great and our country strong. I also want to recognize the family of Jessie Brown and thank them for their sacrifice to our beautiful country. I thank you once again for this honor. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States of America.
Well, good morning, Boston. Great to see so many of you out here today to pay tribute to the skill that was just described, to the shipbuilders and the ship workers who put this wonderful ship together. But Governor Baker, Secretary Spencer, and Chairman Dunford, ship sponsors, the entire commissioning committee, and Mayor Walsh, but most of all to the citizens of Boston and indeed all of the greater New England area from Kennebunkport to Fall River. Thank you for hosting this event today here. The obligation to serve, the obligation to lead. So on behalf of them and of all the 600,000 sailors, civilians throughout the United States Navy, God bless this wonderful town of Boston, Mayor, for hosting a spectacular event. But most of all, God bless the Hudner family and the family of our 41st president. God bless this great ship and the crew you're about to see bring her to life. And God bless the United States of America and the great land we call freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Admiral Moran. Ladies and gentlemen, General Joseph Dunford.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's truly an honor to be here this morning, and I'm particularly humbled to be here with our Medal of Honor recipients, Governor Baker, the Mayor, Congressman Lynch, distinguished leaders from Massachusetts, and most importantly, the Hudner and the Brown families. I joined Secretary Spencer, Admiral Moran, and the other leaders on stage in representing your men and women in uniform. As we conduct this ceremony, 275,000 of your soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are operating around the world in 177 different countries. And as you know, many of them are in harm's way. I'd ask you to keep them in your thoughts and prayers, as well as the families of those we lost last weekend. I'm also here as the son of a Marine who was on the ground fighting at the Chosin Reservoir. On 4 December 1950, Ensign Brown and Lieutenant Hudner were supporting my father and his fellow Marines. And finally, I'm here as someone who had the privilege of spending time with Captain Hudner at events over the course of 30 years. I first met him in the late 1980s, and I can clearly remember the encounter. Someone pointed out Captain Hudner to me, and he gave me his background. And I immediately went over and waited in line, hoping just to shake the hand of a true American hero. And given the line, I expected just to have a quick reading and then to move on. But as we shook hands, Captain Hudner looked me in the eyes. He asked me about my assignment. He asked me about my Marines and sailors. He took the time to be engaged. In that initial engagement, I was struck by Captain Thomas Hudner's courtesy and his humility. And in later engagements, I gained an appreciation for his commitment to service and his character. I'd also learned how he viewed his Medal of Honor. In his own words, he viewed the medal less as an honorific than as an obligation to use the platform it brought him to bring attention to all those who served and sacrificed. So I have a brief and a simple message today, and it's for the captain and the crew. We've named this ship the Hudner in honor of Captain Thomas Hudner's actions on 4 December 1950, and I know you'll ensure that future generations of young sailors are inspired by his courage. But don't let Captain Hudner's legacy be reduced to just one incident, no matter how heroic. This ship should sustain the memory of Captain Hudner's 3 decades of naval service and his continued public service after taking off the uniform. This ship should honor the memory of a humble servant leader, a loving family man, and a man of character. This ship should sustain the memory of a life well led. Thank you, Semper Fidelis, and to the crew of the USS Thomas Hudner, fair winds and following seas.
Thank you, General Dunford. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Stephen Lynch.
Good morning. Thank you, Commander Litchfield, for your kind introduction, and thank you all for being here today. Governor Baker, Mayor Walsh, all of my colleagues in government, members of the Massachusetts Senate and state representative, thank you for being here. Ambassador Ray Flynn. I'd also like to thank Chaplain David Shirk, Coast Guard Detachment Boston, for his blessing this morning, as well as the Hudner and Brown families, and the many Congressional Medal of Honor recipients who are here with us today. It is a special privilege for me today to welcome and stand at this dais with General Joseph Dunford, the highest ranking military officer in the United States military today as head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. A son of South Boston, and as a representative of South Boston, as someone who worked in this port, I want to say what an honor it is to have you with us here today. I first met General Dunford in Iraq when he was a lieutenant general at CENTCOM. I met him again about 9 months later in Afghanistan. He had been appointed commander of ISAF, the International Security Assistance Force. And then I met him again about 14 months later in Washington, D.C. at the Rayburn Building. And I was told that he had just been appointed Commandant of the Marine Corps. It was at that point I realized that Joe was having trouble holding down a steady job. So I am extremely happy that he has remained in his current position as head of our Joint Chiefs of Staff. Like most of the elected officials in South Boston, principally because of our friend Tom Lyons, I've had the honor on many, many occasions to enjoy the company of Tom Hudner. Most frequently on Memorial Day, as you might expect, and Veterans Day are one of the many events that Tom Lyons has hosted our Medal of Honor recipients. Tom Hudner was a total gentleman. He was a class act. He was a humble hero. And if I could be so bold as to offer my opinion, if Captain Hudner were here today, he'd start off by insisting that we're actually honoring two men here today, Tom Hudner and Jessie Brown, and all those men and women who served with them. For our part, we are here to honor their sacrifice, and we are here to try in a small way to pay the debt of a grateful nation, to not only recall their heroic actions on the battlefield, but also to give thanks to the power of example that they provided to America in the 1950s, and the profound expression of mutual regard as brothers in uniform. An example that I pray might guide our society today. In closing, I want to thank Commander Nathan Sherry and his crew aboard the USS Hudner. I have the opportunity as a member of Congress to, on occasion, request that flags be flown over the United States Capitol. So I would ask Commander Sherry to please step forward. This is to certify the accompanying flag was flown over the United States Capitol at the request of the Honorable Stephen F. Lynch, Member of Congress. This flag was flown over the United States Capitol in recognition of the commissioning of the USS Thomas Hudner DDG 6116, presented to Commander Nathan Sherry, United States Navy, and the crew in honor of Captain Thomas J. Hudner, Jr., Naval Aviator, Medal of Honor recipient for his valiant efforts on April 13, 1951, in attempting to save the life of his squadron mate, Ensign Jessie L. Brown, in the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir during the Korean War. Signed by Stephen Ayers, Architect of the Capitol. May God bless our men and women in uniform, no matter where they are deployed, and may God continue to bless these United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lynch. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Thomas Hudner III.
Thank you. I needed that. Good morning, distinguished guests, family, and friends. On behalf of my late father, Captain Tom Hudner, my mother, Georgia, and our entire family, I extend our very sincere appreciation to everyone here today for joining us for this momentous occasion. My father was a very humble and understated man, one who always deflected praise and attention. So when it was announced in 2012 that a United States Navy guided missile destroyer would be named for him, he was overwhelmed and he was grateful. While many of us would say that was an extraordinary act, my father never thought of himself or that action as extraordinary. To the contrary, when he was asked through the years why he did it, he responded simply that it was the right thing to do, and if he hadn't done it, someone else would have. The ship's commanding officer, Captain Thomas Sisson, did feel that it was an extraordinary act. And when he recommended my father for the Congressional Medal of Honor, he wrote, quote, "There's been no finer act of unselfish heroism in military history." We remember Jessie today and every day, and we are honored to have so many members of Jessie's family with us here for this event. Their support and friendship means so much to our family, and I know that Dad and Jessie would be so pleased to know that the bond that they formed as friends and squadron mates more than 68 years ago continues through our families today. While we regret that my father did not live to witness today's event, we will be forever grateful that he was alive to see and participate in the evolution of the ship's development From the naming ceremony here in Boston in 2012 to the christening last year in Bath, Maine. It was a thrill for him to have the opportunity to visit Bath Iron Works many times and to meet and to thank the men and women who are bringing his namesake ship to life. We thank all of these men and women for their service, and we vow to never forget their sacrifices to protect our freedom and the freedom of others. Under Commander Sherry's leadership, the crew made personal connections with my father when he was alive. As a family, we feel truly honored to know the crew. We share his pride in you, and we are so grateful that you are serving aboard this great ship. As a family, we are so humbled and honored to participate in today's event and to celebrate our country, the United States Navy, and the commissioning of the USS Thomas Hudner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudner. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Richard Spencer.
Medal of Honor recipients, Tuskegee Airmen, uniformed members of our services, veterans, Governor Baker, Congressman Lynch, General Dunford, Admiral Moran, the Honorable Ray Mabus, who is the naming authority for this ship. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for inviting me here today to share in this great event. To the family of the Thomas Hudner, thank you for honoring us with your presence today. I'd be remiss if I also didn't thank Captain Tom Hennessy for his amazing job here in the commissioning exercise that we've had, elegant and exquisite. I also want to thank the uniformed members, the civilian and contracting team that delivered the Thomas Hudner here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we continually hear a thump that our U.S. government is broken. Please avert your eyes to the man of war in front of you. This ship, whose mission is peace through presence, but with its warrior team, is able to deliver the fight tonight, is out there on your behalf as the forward deployed team. I'd be remiss if I also didn't say that the Commonwealth lost a son last night, and the United States lost a diplomat and a career servant to this country, our 41st President, George Herbert Walker Bush. May we keep the family in our memories. 2 months ago, it was my honor to speak at the Medal of Honor Society at their annual convivium. A greater collection of heroes and patriots probably could never be found. But what made that gathering very special and very particular was that it was on the grounds of the United States Naval Academy. Just steps away was the next generation of patriots studying for their midterm exams. It reminded me of the unbroken chain that Thomas Hudner embodied throughout his whole life. From the moment his service began at the United States Naval Academy to the day he earned the Medal of Honor. The day he earned the Medal of Honor, and think that what he did, crash landed his ship next to his wingman and shipmate, Jessie Brown. He spent a lifetime looking out for his shipmates after that. And his spirit will live on, ladies and gentlemen, in the proud service of every man and woman aboard this destroyer we commission today. The USS Thomas Hudner is proof of what teamwork of all our people can do, all we can accomplish together. A special tip of my hat to the workers at Bath Iron Work. Bath built, best built. It remains the saying today. I also want to extend a special word of thanks to the plank owners and officers and crew of the USS Thomas Hudner and their families. We all know the men and women wearing navy blue can't get to where they are without the support of their families. I know the extreme demands that sea service can put on both the sailor and the family. And I stand with you and with all the gratitude of a nation for your service. Understand that as you take to sea, know that all of you are backed by the Department of the Navy, the Department of Defense that sails with you, as does a very grateful nation. And now it's my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce the keynote speaker, a distinguished leader, a dedicated public servant who, by the way, just got his commission to serve another round of command tour of his own, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, and let me just begin by thanking all of you who came out today to celebrate this glorious and joyous event. I also want to thank the commissioning committee, the folks at Bath Iron Works, the Navy, our elected and appointed officials who are here with us today, and our men and women in uniform. But I want to start in particular by recognizing the crew of this magnificent vessel. They've been in Maine for the past 2 years, while their families have remained home across the country. I want to thank you and your families for your dedication, your sacrifice, and your service to this country. You know, I had the pleasure of working with Tom Hudner for almost a decade in the 1990s when he was the Commissioner of Veterans Services here in Massachusetts. You, the members of this crew, should be proud to operate a ship named after such a special man. Simply put, and you've heard a bit about this today, it was never about Tom Hudner. He was the consummate team player, and the only way you would have known anything about what took place on that mountaintop during the Korean War would have been to have heard about it from somebody else or to read about it, because he never talked about it. In fact, when he was asked back in the day to talk about a picture at which point President Truman was placing the Medal of Honor around his neck, Tom changed the subject. He said, you know, it had been a couple of days after President Truman had fired General MacArthur, and the president had received a lot of criticism. So we're on the Rose Garden steps, and Daisy Brown, the widow of Jessie Brown, the fellow I tried to pull out of his airplane, was there, escorted by a black Navy lieutenant. After he put the medal around my neck, the president started to leave, and as he turned around on those Rose Garden steps, he stumbled, and the lieutenant caught him before he fell. Now, I don't think he would have fallen on his face, but still, the lieutenant looks at him and says, well, Mr. President, I hope you know that somebody here is still supporting you. Real heroes are humble. They don't talk about themselves. They talk about and encourage others. They say thank you. They pump up their teammates, their family, their friends. And they view their own decisions, whatever they might be, as nothing special. On December 4, 1950, almost 68 years ago to the day from today, Tom disobeyed a direct order and crashed his plane on a snow-covered mountaintop in 15-degree weather to try to save his friend and fellow airman, Jessie Brown. It was an act of bravery and sacrifice that bordered on the edge of recklessness. But Tom didn't see it that way. Jessie was alive, and it looked as if he needed nothing except a good tug to get him out of that airplane. I just didn't think very much about hurting myself. I just felt that, for what it was worth taking the chance. So matter of fact, so focused on his friend, so understated and unassuming, so Tom Hudner. Some years later, Tom said his first thought when he crash landed the plane was something like, God, what the hell am I doing here? Just climbing up the snowy, slippery slope and then finding a way to look into the cockpit of Jessie Brown's plane and reach out to him was work. He couldn't create the leverage he needed to pull him out, and given the damage to the cockpit, it's not clear he would have been able to haul him out even if he'd had the leverage to make a go of it. Still, he stayed with Jessie, talked about the situation they were facing together, and tried a variety of approaches to set him free. Eventually, after about 45 minutes, a rescue helicopter showed up, and Tom had no choice but to leave with the copter, hoping to come back later to extract his friend with better equipment. Alas, the weather and the enemy made the return trip impossible. But Tom never forgot Jessie's widow or his family. And in fact, he paid for Daisy's post-war college education with his discharge bonus and stayed close to her and to her family throughout Daisy's life. And he said many times that he thought about Jessie Brown every single day for the rest of his life. And like almost every member of the military I've ever met, Tom didn't think what he did was particularly special. In one interview, he said the men he served with would do anything for one another. Another time, he said, you know, I wrecked an airplane and I didn't even get the guy out of the wreckage. I happen to be an aviator, but an infantryman who cannot dig deep enough or fast enough to get away from enemy gunfire will still jump up at the first sign of trouble to pull a buddy to safety. It's an attitude that is latent for the most part in normal life, but comes out when you're suddenly confronted with life and death in a situation like that. After Tom's passing, the Boston Globe wrote an obituary that noted that Tom spent much of his time talking about his wingmate, Jessie Brown, when this ship was christened in Maine 2 years ago. Tom said Jessie was loyal to Daisy, loyal to his squadron, loyal to the Navy service, and in return, people were very loyal to him. That's because Tom never thought it was all about him. He led by example and brought a steely sense of purpose and dignity to everything he did. It is my fervent hope that this ship is imbued with the humility, the selflessness, the patriotism, the commitment to one another, and the kindness and decency that transcends our differences that made Tom so special. Godspeed and safe seas to the crew to the USS Thomas Hudner. God bless the Commonwealth, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Baker. Secretary Spencer, I would be honored if you would now place Thomas Hudner in commission.
For the President of the United States, I hereby place the United States ship Thomas Hudner in commission. May God bless her and guide this warship and all that sail in her.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Executive Officer, hoist the colors and the commission pennant.
Aye, sir. Thomas Hudner, hut's in. Hut! Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. I direct your attention to the ship's mast as we hoist the colors and the commission pennant. Quartermaster, hoist the colors and the commission pennant. Captain, the colors and commission pennant are flying over USS Thomas Hudner.
Very well.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
I will now read my orders. From Commander, Naval Military Personnel Command, to Commander Nathan Sherry, United States Navy. Subject, Buford's Orders 1085 of 17 April 2015. When directed by Reporting Senior, detach in June 2015 from present duty and report to Pre-Commissioning Unit Thomas Hudner DDG 116 as Commanding Officer. Upon commissioning of USS Thomas Hudner, report for duty as Commanding Officer. Admiral Moran, United States ship Thomas Hudner is in commission and I am in command. Executive Officer, set the watch.
Aye, sir. Officer of the deck, set the first watch.
Aye, sir.
The officer of the deck is the commanding officer's direct representative, and while on watch, is responsible for the safe operation of the ship and crew. The long glass is a traditional symbol of an officer of the deck's authority in the ship of the line. We are pleased to have Miss Jessica Knight Henry and Mr. Thomas Hudner III in attendance. They will pass the long glass to Chief Warrant Officer Joshua Danson from Crossfield, Tennessee, our first officer of the deck. The Petty Officer of the Watch is Fire Controlman First Class Vincent Muniz from Bronx, New York. The Messenger of the Watch is Quartermaster Seaman Angela Munoz from Pecos, Texas. And the Boatswain's Mate of the Watch is Boatswain's Mate Third Class Jerron Hancock from Cleveland, Ohio.
Set the watch. On deck, Section 1. Sir, the watch is set.
Very well. Captain, the watch is set.
Very well. We are delighted to have our sponsors, Mrs. Georgia Hudner and Mrs. Barbara Miller, with us today. Georgia and Barbara christened the ship in Bath, Maine in April 2017. Ladies, I would be honored if you would join me and give the order to man our ship and bring her to life.
Officers and crew of the USS Thomas Hudner, man our ship and bring her to life.
gentlemen, the crew of USS Thomas Hudner salutes you. We are proud to serve in your great Navy. Ready? Two. Will the guests please be seated? Captain, USS Thomas Hudner is manned and ready.
Very well. Vice Admiral Brown, USS Thomas Hudner is manned and ready and reports for duty, sir. Very well, sir. Secretary Spencer, request permission to break your flag, sir. Executive Officer, break the flag of the Secretary of the Navy.
Aye, sir. Quartermaster, break the flag of the Secretary of the Navy.
Aye, aye, sir.
Captain, the flag of the Secretary of the Navy is flying over USS Thomas Hudner.
Very well. That was for you, Mr. Secretary.
Ladies and gentlemen, Commander Nathan Sherry, United States Navy, Commanding Officer, United States Ship Thomas Hudner.
Thomas Hudner, parade, rest. Mrs. Barbara Joan Miller, Mrs. Georgia Hudner and family, Mrs. Pamela Brown Knight and family, Governor Baker, Mayor Walsh, Secretary Spencer, General Dunford, Admiral Moran, Vice Admiral Brown, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. For Captain Tom Hudner, it was about family. I would like to start by taking this opportunity today to talk about my family. Help me recognize my wife Rosa and 3 of our 4 children here today, Nathan Jr., Michaela, Elizabeth. Rosa is the foundation of our family and strong as steel. Together, Rosa and I owe a debt of gratitude to her mother, Neela, who has contributed so much to ensuring that what we continue to build together remains strong. Today, we come together as a family to celebrate our ship's namesake, Captain Thomas J. Hudner, Jr., who on 4 December 1950 valiantly and intentionally crash-landed his own plane to save his element leader, his friend, and his shipmate, Ensign Jessie Brown. Today, we come together as a family to honor the character of the man for whom this ship is named. It is through his character that he was able to defy what was once the core elements of a society that continually wronged people who were not like the majority they lived with. It is through his character that upon ending 27 years of naval service, he then served our veterans in the great city of Boston for another 4 decades. Today, we come together as a family to remember Captain Hudner for what he left behind and continue to build a legacy of better American citizens who show more concern for their brother, sister, friend, or neighbor than the concern they have for themselves. A legacy where we understand and endeavor to better ourselves and those around us and help those soldiers, airmen, Marines, and sailors that have gone before us to serve our great nation and put themselves in harm's way to defend values, beliefs, and ideals for which this country stands for, and for which they believed in so strongly that they risked their lives defending them. As we celebrate our ship coming to life and entering into naval service, we endeavor as a crew to be better human beings. As we celebrate, we endeavor as a crew to serve honorably. And as we celebrate, we look forward to the day where we might be tested and even find ourselves in a predicament, as he was, where we will do what it takes without hesitation, despite the odds, despite the orders, despite barriers in society, to save our brothers and sisters who are themselves in harm's way. We look forward to the day where we too can be like our ship's namesake, like Captain Hudner. Before you stand 312 of Americans' finest sons and daughters from 46 different states, as well as several countries around the world, with over 2,288 years of combined experience, that have chosen to serve their country and continue to fight for what we believe in as a nation. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause and recognition for their hard work, dedication, and service to this great nation. I can't begin to tell you how grateful we are as a crew for how well this ship is built and for all the support we have received to make this day happen. Helping each other out and working as a cohesive team.
Ship's company, attend hut. Will the guests please rise? Chaplain Shirk will now lead us in the benediction.
A sailor's prayer. Let us pray. Dear Lord, I'm just a sailor, a protector of the land, a servant called to battle when my country takes a stand. I pray for strength and courage. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Shirk. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and remain seated.